He smiled before he walked through that door. And that smile is the reason you slept just fine that night. The credits rolled, you turned off the lamp, and you thought, what a beautiful ending, the guy finally won. I need you to do something for me now, and you are probably not going to enjoy it. Go back to that moment, freeze the frame, look at Truman Burbank's face with clinical attention, without the swelling orchestra telling you what to feel. That is not joy. That is the face of a man who has not yet processed the size of what he just found out. That is a shock smile. It is the same expression you see on people pulled out of car wrecks in the minutes before the pain arrives, while adrenaline is still doing the work of anesthesia. Truman did not walk through a door into freedom. He walked through a door into collapse. And the cruelest detail of all, the one the movie hides from you behind a staircase painted on the sky and a heavenly choir, is that the real horror only begins when the screen goes black. Because nobody wanted to show you his Monday. Nobody filmed the next morning. Nobody filmed the moment he wakes up in a real room, in a world with no script, no marks on the floor, nobody scheduled to care about him, and understands there is no ground left under his feet. Free will, handed to a man who was never given a single emotional tool to survive free will, is not liberation. It is eviction. It is dropping a 30-year-old man in the middle of an interstate and calling it emancipation. Stay with me, because over the next 25 minutes, I am going to take apart the most misunderstood ending in film history, one layer at a time. And when I am done, you will never look at that door again without something very specific crawling up the base of your spine. 30 years. Sit with that number, because people say it way too fast. It was not a 30-day prank. It was not a reality competition with people screaming in a house for a summer. It was 30 years. It was his entire life. Truman was the first child in history legally adopted by a corporation. He did not have parents. He had cast members. He did not have a childhood. He had seasons. 1.7 billion people watched him being born, and 220 countries tuned in for his first step. Think about what that actually means in cold terms. Before he had memory, before he had language, before he was neurologically capable of forming the concept of a self, that infant was already intellectual property. And here is the first thing the film gets you to swallow without chewing. Christof was not a director. A director works with actors who signed something. Christof worked with a specimen. What existed inside that dome was not a studio. It was a Skinner box the size of a small town, with the weather on a cue sheet, with the sun rising on a production schedule, with the moon being one man's control room. Every bakery, every corner, every face that said good morning was a calibrated stimulus. And calibrated stimulus, applied without a single break for 3 decades, is not set design. It is surgery, slow surgery performed without anesthesia, inside a developing brain. And the man holding the scalpel was not trying to heal anything. He was trying to hold a demographic. And if you think torture is too strong a word, I want you to remember something that movie shows you in about 2 minutes. Something you probably filed away as a plot device. Christof killed Truman's father in front of him. Staged a storm, staged a capsizing, staged a drowning, and let a small boy watch his own dad disappear under the water. And he did it for a reason that was almost administrative. He needed to install a phobia. He needed an invisible fence, and the best fence ever built is fear. So they induced aquaphobia in a child, using the simulated corpse of that child's father as a teaching aid. There is a term for that in the clinical literature, and the term is not entertainment. Aversive conditioning with primary trauma, and they did not stop there. Every impulse toward escape in that man's life was answered with engineering. He wanted to be an explorer, and a teacher rolled down a map and told him there was nothing left to discover. He tried to buy a ticket, and the travel agency had a poster on the wall of an airliner being split open by lightning, warning travelers about what happens out there. He made it onto a bus, and the bus broke down. He hit the gas pedal, and suddenly there was a nuclear leak, a forest fire, a roadblock, a wall of men in hazmat suits. 30 years of brutally consistent training with one lesson. Every time you try to leave, the universe hurts you. That does not produce a cautious man. That produces learned helplessness, and learned helplessness does not switch off the second a door opens. So now let us talk about what was left inside that skull, because this is where it gets genuinely dark. The human brain is a prediction machine. Its entire job is to guess the next second, and when the guess lands, it pays you in chemistry. Truman's brain spent 3 decades in an environment where the guess always landed, because there was an author guaranteeing it landed. The neighbor always walked the dog at the same time. The twins always appeared on the same corner to pin him against the same advertisement. His wife always poured the same cocoa and recited the same sponsor copy in the middle of a marital argument. His world had rhythm. It had meter. It rhymed. And the price of that is that he never built any tolerance for chaos. None. He is 30 years old chronologically, and maybe 3 years old in terms of handling randomness, because genuine randomness never once got past the airlock. You know what happens when you take an organism out of a perfectly predictable environment and drop it into one with no author at all? You do not get euphoria. You get panic. You get a nervous system demanding a pattern where no pattern exists. And when a brain cannot find the pattern, it manufactures one. Manufacturing patterns that are not there has a name too. It is called paranoid ideation, and it is the beginning of every psychotic break ever documented. So let us rebuild, with some cruel honesty, Truman Burbank's first week on the outside. Day 1. He's in a real city, and the first thing that breaks in him is not philosophical, it is sensory. Noise with no mix. People talking over each other, nobody waiting for a cue. A stranger bumps his shoulder and does not apologize, and he freezes, because in 30 years of life, nobody ever bumped into him without it meaning something. Every collision inside the dome was a story beat. Out here, a collision is just entropy, but he has no way of knowing that. He will spend the rest of his life hunting for intent inside accidents. Day 2. He sits down in a diner, and the waitress smiles at him, and that smile will destroy his entire afternoon, because he is an expert in professional warmth. He was raised inside an ocean of it. He will look at that face and ask himself the question that never leaves him again. What are they paying you? Day 3. He finds the smoke detector on the ceiling of his room and does not sleep. He unscrews the outlet cover. He turns the mirror to face the wall. He drapes a towel over the television, knowing there is no lens in it, because knowing does not cure a reflex. Day 4. He realizes the 5,000 cameras in the dome were actually the smallest part of the problem. And here is the worst part, the part where the cruelty becomes perfect. He is going to be right. He will suspect somebody is filming him, and somebody will be filming him. He will decide that 2 people across the street are talking about him, and they will be talking about him. His paranoia will be fed real, verifiable evidence every single day of his life, and paranoia that keeps getting confirmed is the one form of madness nobody knows how to treat. But if you want to find the exact spot where that man was ruined permanently, it is not the door, and it is not the boat, and it is not the storm. It is the bed. It is intimacy. Because Truman was married, he woke up next to a woman for years, shared a bathroom, shared a sink, shared the specific silence of a Sunday afternoon, and every minute of it was a work contract. She hugged him and looked at the lens over his shoulder. She kissed him and said a brand name. She told him she loved him in the same voice she used to sell a knife set. And here is the obscene part, the part people skip. There was sex in that house. There was a man making himself physically vulnerable in the most defenseless position a human being can occupy. And there was an audience, millions of them, and an actress doing the math on how much of it was good for the ratings. So tell me, with clinical honesty, how does that man ever build a healthy attachment again? Love, to Truman's brain, is not connection. Love is the single most thoroughly documented betrayal in human history, and he is the subject of the documentation. Every time somebody says, "I love you" to him, an alarm system will automatically ask who is funding that sentence. That is not jealousy. That is not insecurity. That is not something couples therapy resolves in 8 sessions. That is deep learning, burned into the most primitive layer of attachment. That tenderness is the tool they use to keep you in the enclosure. And there is a wound underneath the marriage that goes even deeper, and it is friendship. Marlon, the childhood best friend, the guy with the six-pack at the end of the day, the only shoulder Truman ever had. There is a scene in that film which is, in my honest opinion, the most vicious thing ever put on screen about loyalty, and most of the audience walks right past the monstrosity of it. Truman is coming apart, suspecting everything, and Marlon looks him dead in the eye and swears he would never lie to him, swears he would step in front of traffic for him. And while that sentence is leaving Marlon's mouth, the words are being fed to him, one at a time, through an earpiece, by Christof from a control room, syllable by syllable. The most beautiful declaration of friendship in Truman's entire life was written by a stranger and performed by an employee. Think about what that installs in a man's head once he knows. It is not just that his friend lied. It is that the emotion he felt in that moment, the actual relief in his chest, the gratitude that let him breathe easier, all of it was engineered on purpose and then monetized in the next commercial break. He was robbed of his own feelings. And now, out here, every time somebody tells him I have got you, his brain is going to start looking for the earpiece. Every time, for the rest of his life. Friendship became containment technology too. Which brings me to Sylvia, and Sylvia is the saddest part of this story, not the hopeful one. The movie trained you to root for her, to see redemption in that woman, proof that something real exists somewhere. Let us be adults for a second. Truman spent a few minutes with her on a beach, under artificial light, before they dragged her off the set. And then, for over a decade, he built an entire woman inside his own head, out of one face, and about 30 seconds of conversation. He was cutting up magazines to reassemble her eye, her nose, her mouth. That is not love. That is the textbook definition of fixation. He did not love Sylvia. He loved the only thing in that world that got interrupted before it could be corrupted. So what happens when this man finally meets the actual woman, who has aged, who has opinions he did not write for her, who has a life, a smell, a way of chewing that does not match the fantasy that kept him sane for 10 years? The fantasy dies. It has to. And underneath that, a second layer that is even worse. Sylvia is an activist. She spent years campaigning for him, holding a sign, wearing his face on a button. She needs him to be a cause. And a man who desperately needs to be nobody in particular is going to find the woman of his dreams and discover that to her, too, he is a symbol. Nobody on that planet can look at Truman and see just a guy, not even her. And while that settles, I want to ask you for something that fits this topic uncomfortably well. Hit the like button on this video. But before you do, run an experiment with me. Notice your thumb. Notice the decision to move your thumb. Do you think that was you, right now, on your own? Or were you walked here by a system that studied your behavior, picked that thumbnail for you, picked that title, and knew almost exactly how many seconds into this video you would still be listening? It took Truman 30 years to notice his life had a director. Are you completely certain you have identified who writes yours? Hit like anyway. Hit it knowing the impulse might not have been entirely your own. That specific chill is the whole reason this channel exists. Now, we have to talk about the real monster in this story, because the film misled you about that too. You walked out hating Christof. Christof is the easy villain, the face on the moon, the man in the beret talking about God. Christof is convenient. But Christof would not have lasted a single day without one thing, an audience. One man does not torture a child for 30 years. An industry does, and an industry only survives on consumers. So go back and look at the people that movie shows you watching. Look at the bar full of grown adults with drinks in their hands, cheering like it is the fourth quarter. Look at the old man in the bathtub, water up to his chest, watching so long he has become furniture. Look at the two women on the couch with a throw pillow that has Truman's face stitched into it, clutching that pillow like a relic. Look at the parking garage guards eating out of a paper bag in front of the monitor. Those people are not watching a program. They are watching a living human being's life get consumed in real time. and they know it. There is no possible innocence in that room. Every single person on that planet knew that Truman did not know. That is the product. His ignorance is the product. What was being sold in 220 countries was the right to look at a man who cannot look back. And that final applause, the one that put a lump in your throat, is not empathy. Empathy would have shut the television off in year one. Empathy would have been lawsuits, boycotts, somebody driving a truck through the wall of that soundstage. What that applause actually is, technically, is catharsis. It is the emotional discharge of people who just watched the best constructed season finale of the decade. They applauded the writing, not the man. And if you doubt me, the film hands you the most perfect and most damning piece of evidence about human nature ever shot, and it lasts about 8 seconds. Truman walks through the door. 30 years of a person's life conclude in front of the entire world. And the security guard, still chewing, picks up the remote and asks what else is on. 8 seconds. That is the total grief our species allocated to Truman Burbank. 8 seconds and a channel search for the next thing. No vigil, no moment of silence, no hearing, just channel surfing. And I have to be blunt with you here. If you have ever watched a dash cam death all the way through, if you have ever scrolled the comments under a tragedy looking for one more detail, if you have ever followed somebody's public breakdown like it was a season of television, you have already sat in that bar. You just never had to see your own face on the screen. And those exact people are the ones waiting for Truman on the outside. That is what nobody wants to sit with. The Dome had 5,000 cameras. The street has 8 billion. He is, without any competition whatsoever, the most recognizable face in the history of the planet. There is no anonymous grocery line for him. No waiting room where the receptionist does not wave a coworker over. No first date without somebody filming from the next table. And there is one specific category of viewer who will come looking for him. The ones who believe they know him. 30 years of one-sided intimacy creates a counterfeit sense of kinship. The woman with the pillow sincerely believes she loves him. An unreciprocated love that feels entitled has a very old name. Stalking. They will show up at his door. They will mail him letters about what they felt on his wedding day and demand the ending they paid for. They will get offended when he turns out to be irritable, exhausted, ordinary, human, because the Truman they love does not exist. That Truman was an edited character, with cuts, with music, with the best angle chosen from 40 options. The real man is going to disappoint the fan base, and a disappointed fan base turns hostile. He escaped a prison where one man watched him and walked into a world where everyone does, with no walls, no schedule, and no season finale. And now, the part nobody ever discusses, the bureaucratic part, which is where life actually crushes people. Truman Burbank does not have paperwork. No valid birth certificate in any real jurisdiction. No social security number. No school transcript anybody would accept. No credit history, no lease in his name, no driver's license, no tax record, no employment history that exists anywhere outside a television archive. His job was selling insurance in an office that was a set, writing policies that did not exist, for clients who were extras. 30 years of professional experience worth precisely 0 on a resume. He has never used the actual internet, never seen an airport, never crossed a city with real traffic in it. He does not understand money, interest, deductibles, rent, layoffs, waiting rooms, bad news that arrives without a music cue, and everything he does have, his face, his voice, his childhood, every frame of his memory, belongs contractually to a network. He is not a man, he is a library. So the bill comes due, and it comes fast, and somebody in a good suit sits down across from him with an offer, and the offer is the filthiest thing in this entire story. To survive in the real world, Truman is going to have to sell his own story. The interview, the book, the documentary, the anniversary special. The only currency he owns is his suffering. To eat, he has to become Christof. Let us put clinical names on this, because names matter. There is a well-documented phenomenon in people who spend long stretches inside total institutions. prisons, long-stay psychiatric hospitals, closed orphanages. It is called institutionalization. The person adapts so completely to external structure that they lose the ability to generate internal structure. Take away the routine, take away the wall, and they do not bloom. They disintegrate. They cannot decide what to eat. They cannot survive an empty afternoon. A lot of them ask to go back in, not because they liked it, but because out here hurts more. Truman is the most extreme case that literature could ever imagine, because he was not institutionalized for 10 years as an adult. He was born institutionalized. There is no pre-dome Truman for a therapist to recover. There is no baseline. And on top of that, he is going to develop what clinicians call derealization, the persistent sense that the world around you is not real, that it is cardboard, that it is staged. Notice the sadistic perfection of that inversion. The only environment his brain recognizes as legitimate was fake, and the only legitimate environment will feel fake to him forever. He took the dome with him. The dome is internal now, and there is no door painted on the inside wall. And this brings us to the single cruelest irony in modern psychiatry. And this one is real. This is not something a screenwriter invented. There is a documented presentation described by two psychiatrist brothers in the late 2000s, named after this exact movie. The Truman Show delusion. Real patients, walking down real streets, convinced they are being filmed, convinced the neighbors are actors, convinced there is a production tracking every step, convinced their family is getting paid. It is one of the most agonizing forms psychotic suffering takes. And how does a clinician treat it? With the central tool of all psychotherapy, reality testing. The doctor says, firmly and kindly, nobody is watching you. There are no cameras. These people love you for real. That sentence is what brings people home. Now look at where Truman is standing. He is the only human being on Earth for whom that sentence is a lie. He is the only patient in history whose suspicion was not a delusion, but a memory. No professional in any office, anywhere on this planet, can look him in the eye and say the words that heal, because in his case, the words that heal are false, and he knows it, and he has 30 years of broadcast footage to prove it. Do you understand the scale of that? Christof sentenced him to a clinically accurate paranoia, and medicine has no cure for being right. So let me take you to where this story actually ends, months after the door, once the news vans got bored and it was just him. At first, there was euphoria. There always is. He saw rain that nobody scheduled. He ate food that no sponsor selected. He walked down a street that did not curve back toward his own house, and it was beautiful for a few weeks. Then the erosion started, and erosion is quiet. He stops going out during the day. He starts timing how many minutes pass between the same jogger going by, and he writes it down, and the number is never round, and that makes him more anxious than a round number would have. He begins sleeping with the light on, not because he's afraid of the dark, but because in the dark, he cannot check the ceiling. He meets a kind woman, and it goes well for 3 weeks, until the night she tells him he has a beautiful laugh, and he stands up and leaves the restaurant because somebody said that exact sentence to him once on national television with 2 microphones hidden in a flower arrangement. He loses friends because he tests them. He asks questions no one should ask, just to see whether the answer changes on the second telling. He starts recording his own conversations. And one sleepless night, he does the thing he swore he would never do. He looks up an old episode. He finds the artificial ocean, that wave sound generated by a machine, timed from a control booth. And he cries. Not out of rage. He cries because he misses it, because that counterfeit sound is the only noise in the universe that has ever meant safety to his nervous system. And that is where the conclusion arrives, the one that turns this film from inspiring into pure horror. Truman is going to reach it alone in a rented room, and it is the most depressing realization available to a human being. Inside the lie, he was loved. Badly loved. Falsely loved. Loved on a payment schedule with a line item in a budget. But every single day, somebody knew his name. Somebody opened a door. Somebody asked how his day went. Somebody smiled at him on the corner. Out here, nobody needs him. Out here, he is a topic, a curiosity, an archive. But he is not necessary to a single living person. And the human brain, forced to choose between authentic loneliness and counterfeit affection, picks the counterfeit far more often than any horror movie should let you sleep on. He is going to want back in. He will. He will frame it as shame first, deny it for months, and one day he will say it out loud as a request, almost childlike. Let me back in. And the last cruelty, the one I saved because it closes the coffin, is that there may be nothing left to go back to. Without Truman, the show is over. Without the show, the dome is expensive empty real estate. They strike the set. They sell the beach. They shut off the sun. And if he goes back, what does he find? Unpainted lumber, houses with no fourth wall, a cast that went off to wait tables, a dry ocean, a dark soundstage the size of a stadium. He is not a man without a prison anymore. He is a man with no home in either world, no inside, no outside. He got spat out into a place that does not appear on any map. And right here, exactly here, is where I want you to subscribe to Fractured Plot. Not as a favor. I want you to subscribe after you answer, privately, in the silence of your own head, without telling me the only question this movie is actually asking. If that show existed today, if you opened your phone right now and there it was, live, a real man who does not know he is being filmed, raised on camera since he was an infant, and his marriage was falling apart in this exact minute, would you close the app? Or would you watch just a little, only to understand what the fuss is about, and then a little more, and then every night, and then buy the pillow? Do not answer fast, because a fast answer on this subject is always a lie. Everybody in that bar thought they were a decent person. Nobody wakes up feeling like the monster. If that question bothered you, if it stuck to something, then this channel is yours. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because I am going to keep holding up exactly this kind of mirror, and it is never going to show you a flattering angle. One last thing, and then I will leave you alone, if alone is the right word. We love that film because it has a wall. A wall is comforting. As long as there is a wall painted sky blue, there is an outside, there is a door. There is the possibility of knocking on it and hearing the hollow sound of the fraud and finally understanding everything. Truman got that privilege. The privilege of seeing the whole lie at once, with edges, with dimensions, with the director's name in the credits. You do not get that. You do not get a staircase on the horizon or a labeled stage light falling out of the sky to warn you. What you get is a world that adjusts itself to you with a delicacy Christof could never have managed, that learns what frightens you, that decides which story you see first, that selects who you find attractive, that knows the exact hour of the night your willpower is weakest. And there is no set designer to blame, no cast to confront, no exit sign painted above a door. Truman's prison was crude, and that is why he escaped it. Yours is elegant, and that is why you call it a life. He walked through that door and he smiled, with no idea he was signing his own sentence. And maybe the only thing left of him in the end is the line he used to say every morning to a street that was never a street. And in case I do not see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good luck, because you are going to need a great deal more of it than he did.